think it's working. Okay. Before we even dive into today's training, I want to pause and talk about why this conversation matters. In a veterinary practice, cash flow is not just another accounting term, it's the heartbeat of your business. You can have exam rooms full, doctor's books solid, and invoices going out the door. But if the money isn't coming in steadily and predictably, it will feel like you're always scrambling. I talk to practice owners every week who tell me the same story. We're working harder than ever, but I don't see it in the bank account. They're covering payroll, juggling vendor bills, dreading tax deadlines, and at the end of the month, they're left wondering where all the money went. That roller coaster is exhausting, and it keeps you from focusing on medicine, your team, and your clients. When cash flow is steady, everything changes. You have breathing room, you have options, you feel in control instead of reactive. That's why we're here today, because steady cash flow isn't about luck. It's about systems, habits, and small shifts that make a big difference. So, with that in mind, welcome to today's session 9 practical tips to keep your veterinary practice's cash flow steady. These tips are not theory, they're strategies I've tested and refined by working side by side with veterinarians across the country. They are simple, actionable, and designed specifically for the challenges that veterinary practices face. If you've ever felt like money is slipping through your fingers or like you're always one step behind, today's training is for you. For those of you who are new here, I'm Cassie Sykes. I'm an enrolled agent and the founder of Greener Pastures Income Tax. For more than 20 years, I've been helping business owners and especially veterinarians understand their numbers, cut through the noise of taxes and accounting, and finally see a clear path to profitability. Being federally licensed by the U.S. Treasury means I can represent taxpayers in all 50 states, but my passion is working with DVMs. Most accountants file tax returns, but they don't sit down with you to talk about how to keep cash flowing month after month. And that's where I come in to bridge the gap between compliance and strategy. I live here in East Texas with my husband and our 2 teenagers, so I know firsthand what it's like to juggle family, business, and everything life throws at you. My mission is simple to help you create clarity and confidence around your finances so you can focus on the parts of veterinary medicine that drew you to this profession in the first place. So, tip number 1 is to know your baseline numbers. The first step to steady cash flow is knowing your baseline. Baseline is the absolute minimum cost of keeping your doors open every single month. This is your non-negotiable foundation, the number your practice must hit before anything else matters. It includes payroll for your team, your rent or mortgage, insurance premiums, utilities, and those must-have vendor costs like IDEX or BI that keep your operations running. What I see far too often is practice owners skipping this step and managing from instinct instead of data. And here's the truth. If you don't know your baseline numbers, you're essentially running your practice in the dark. You might feel busy, you might even look profitable on paper, but you can still come up short the moment bills hit because you're not tracking what it actually costs to exist. Once you know your baseline, everything changes. You now have a fixed reference point that tells you immediately whether you're ahead, breaking even, or falling behind. Not at the end of the month when it's too late, but in real time. When you still have the chance to course correct, the clarity becomes the backbone, or this clarity will become the backbone of every financial decision that you make. The second tip is to track weekly, not just monthly. Cash flow issues are almost always about timing, not effort, not profitability, not even pricing, but timing. You can do everything right, but if your money comes in on the wrong days and your big expenses go out on the wrong days, you will constantly feel like you're chasing your tail. Maybe payroll and your IDEX bill hit in the exact same week every month. Maybe your insurance reimbursements take longer than expected to arrive. Maybe your client payments spike one week and drop off the next. If you're only checking your cash flow once a month, you're already behind because the damage has already happened before you even notice it. And that's why weekly check-ins aren't optional. They're critical. Every Monday, take 10 minutes to look at what came in last week and what's scheduled to go out this week. That tiny window of visibility gives you the power to get ahead of problems before they become emergencies. I worked with a client who kept feeling blindsided every single month. And when we finally looked at the week by week flow, The issue was obvious. Two major expenses were always overlapping. Once we shifted just one vendor payment earlier in the month, the entire rhythm of their cash flow changed. That single adjustment took weeks that used to feel overwhelming and turned them into completely manageable, predictable cycles. It wasn't about more revenue, it was about better timing. Tip number 3 is to separate your operating and savings accounts. Running everything out of one account is like keeping your mortgage payment, your grocery money, and your emergency savings all in the same jar. It feels simple at first, clean, easy, one place. But as soon as something unexpected happens, you have no money or no idea what money was meant for what. It's confusing and it's dangerous because the moment one big bill hits, it can wipe out funds that were supposed to go to payroll or taxes or vendor bills. And most practice owners don't notice the problem until they're already in the red. The fix for this is straightforward. Separate your money into purpose-driven accounts. Keep your operating account strictly for day-to-day expenses, the normal rhythm of running the hospital. And then every single month, transfer a small percentage into a reserve account. It doesn't have to be huge. Even 3 to 5% builds surprisingly fast when it's consistent. Over a few months, you create a buffer that protects your practice from surprises. Here's the truth. Surprises will happen, equipment will break, and an autoclave will die. A tax bill comes in higher than expected. A slow month hits out of nowhere. When you have a reserve account, you're not scrambling or pulling from payroll to cover a crisis. You're simply drawing from a safety net you intentionally built. And that's what turns cash flow from reactive and stressful into proactive and stable. Tip number 4 is to smooth out your big expenses. Your big bills can wreck your entire month if you don't plan ahead. Insurance renewals, property taxes, quarterly estimates, they don't care what your cash flow looked like last week. They hit when they hit. And when you haven't prepared for them, suddenly you're juggling bills, delaying payments, or dipping into money that was meant for something else. That's when stress happens. That's when stress spikes. Profitability feels worse than it actually is, and you start to lose control of the rhythm of your practice. The solution here is to stop treating these expenses as surprises and start treating them as monthly obligations. Even though they're billed annually or quarterly, they're still part of the true cost of running your practice. So instead of absorbing those hits all at once, break them into manageable monthly accounts or amounts. Dave Ramsey calls them, oh shoot, my brain just stopped working. I can't remember what he calls them. Funds. He calls them funds. So if your liability insurance runs 12,000 a year, move 1,000 a month into a separate account. Not mentally, but literally with an actual transfer. So when the bill comes due, there's no panic, no scrambling, no where do we pull this from? And the money is sitting there ready because you've been funding it gradually all year. It turns what used to be a gut punch moment into just another routine transaction. And the more you do this with every big, predictable expense, the smoother and more stable your cash flow becomes. Tip number 5 is to monitor your payroll carefully. So payroll is usually the largest line item in almost every veterinary practice. And because it feels essential, and it is essential, most owners don't keep a close eye on it. But payroll has a way of creeping up quietly. A few extra hires, a little overtime, a busier season, a raise here and there. And before you know it, your single biggest expense has grown beyond what your revenue can comfortably support. Once payroll crosses that 50% threshold, you feel it every single pay period. Cash flow gets tighter, your operating cushion disappears, and suddenly even normal weeks feel stressful. I worked with a clinic that added a couple of team members without ever looking at their payroll to revenue ratio. On paper, it didn't seem like a big operational change, but financially, their payroll shot to 58% of revenue almost overnight. And the cash squeeze was immediate. They weren't doing anything wrong. They just didn't have visibility into that ratio. Once we dug into it, we made a few strategic adjustments. We structured schedules to match true demand, tightened up on overtime, and clarified responsibilities so the right people were doing the right tasks. Within 2 months, they were back at 48%. That single shift freed up thousands of dollars of cash every month and gave them some breathing room, or gave them back the breathing room they hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about cutting people, it was about aligning payroll with production and getting the ratio back into a healthy range. Tip number 6 is to invoice and collect promptly. Earning revenue is one thing, collecting it is an entirely different skill, and it's where so many veterinary practices quietly lose money. You can have a booming schedule, a packed treatment board, and steady client flow, yet still feel broke because the money you earned never actually hits your bank account. Deposits aren't required, invoices go out days or weeks late, and overdue balances pile up until they feel overwhelming. On paper, it looks like the practice is doing great, but in reality, the cash just isn't there. I had a client who was a perfect example of this. They had over 80,000 sitting in receivables, money they had fully earned but hadn't yet collected. No wonder their bank account was always low and they were constantly stressed about paying bills. Nothing was wrong with their revenue. The problem was in the follow through. Once we implemented a few simple systems, deposits required before services, invoices going out the same day, and a weekly follow-up rhythm for overdue accounts, their entire financial reality changed. They cut that receivable balance in half in 6 months. That money wasn't theoretical anymore. It wasn't stuck in the system. It was in their bank account where it belonged, supporting their payroll, paying their vendors, and giving them breathing room for the first time in years. Revenue doesn't change your life. Collected revenue does. Tip number 7 is to watch your inventory like a hawk. Inventory is one of the biggest silent leaks in veterinary cash flow because most practices don't realize how much money gets tied up in that room until it's too late. When you overstock, you're not just buying extra, you're locking up cash that could have gone to payroll, savings, or equipment. On the flip side, when you understock, you get stuck placing last-minute orders, paying higher shipping costs, or even losing revenue because you can't dispense what you don't have. And expired medications, that's money literally thrown in the trash. It's one of the few areas in a practice where you can see a direct physical pile of dollars disappearing. The practices that thrive treat inventory as a financial system or not. The practices that thrive treat inventory as a financial system, not an afterthought. Someone is explicitly assigned to manage it, not whoever has time, but an actual owner of the process. Inventory is checked weekly, so issues never build up. Ordering isn't placed on gut feeling or what we ordered last time, but on true usage patterns and what the practice actually needs right now. That level of discipline transforms inventory from a cash drain into a controlled, predictable process. The impact on your practice is huge. I've seen practices free up thousands of dollars in cash flow every single year just by tightening up their inventory systems. It's not about cutting quality or restricting clinicians. It's about eliminating waste, making smarter purchasing decisions, and keeping your cash flow working for your practice instead of just sitting on a shelf. Tip number 8 is to forecast. Looking at last month's numbers is helpful. It tells you what happened, but it won't tell you what's coming. That's where forecasting becomes one of the most valuable tools you can use. A good forecast gives you 30, 60, or even 90-day view of what your cash is actually going to do, not just what it did in the past. It shows you the rhythm of your inflows and outflows before you feel them in your bank account. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need special software or a giant budgeting system. A simple spreadsheet with expected deposits, recurring vendor bills, payroll dates, and known upcoming expenses is enough to give you clarity. The power isn't in the format, it's in having visibility and sitting down and doing the work. Once you can see the road ahead, you can make adjustments before a problem hits. When you look at your forecast and realize that payroll, your vendor bills, and your quarterly tax estimates are all landing in the same week, you have time to prepare. Maybe you move a payment, maybe you hold a cash buffer, maybe you speed up collections the week before. You have options. Without that forward view, everything feels like a surprise, even when it was predictable all along. Forecasting takes you out of reactive mode and puts you back in control of your cash flow. Tip number 9 is to build and protect cash reserves. So the ultimate cash flow stabilizer is a reserve. It's the difference between reacting to every unexpected event and confidently handling it without disruption. Start with 1 month of operating expenses, just enough to give yourself breathing room. Then, once that becomes your new normal, build towards 2 or even 3 months. It won't happen overnight, but consistency is what turns a small buffer into real protection. I worked with a client who'd been slowly building their reserves, even though things felt tight at times. They reached a 2-month cushion right before their radiography unit failed without warning. In the past, that would have triggered panic, delayed care, and a scramble to figure out how to pay for the repair. But this time was different. They replaced the unit immediately, never interrupted workflow, and didn't carry the financial stress of the debt for months afterwards. That's what reserves buys you: control, confidence, and continued care. They keep your practice running even when life throws curveballs. They protect payroll, protect patient care, and protect your peace of mind. When you have reserves, emergencies become manageable moments instead of full-blown crises. So there you have it. 9 practical real world strategies to keep your veterinary practice's cash flow steady. None of these tips are complex, but together they completely change how stable and predictable your practice feels. If you're listening and thinking, I don't know my baseline, or I'm not tracking payroll that closely, or I don't have a reserve at all, that's your sign to take action. Don't wait until you're in a crunch. That's exactly why I offer my profit and cash flow analysis. It's a free one-on-one session where we go through your numbers, identify the leaks, and build a plan to steady your cash flow month after month. You'll walk away knowing exactly what to change without second guessing yourself. You can book a free session at the link on the screen. I'll also drop it in the comments. Cash flow doesn't have to feel like a roller coaster. With the right systems in place, you can create security, predictability, and profitability in your practice. Before you go, I want to share an incredible resource designed to elevate your practice's financial success. I put together a free ebook just for you. It's called 7 Financial Strategies. Inside it, you'll discover practical steps to increase profitability, improve cash flow, and make smarter financial decisions for your practice. You can grab your free copy in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you found this helpful, like this video, share it with other veterinarians. If this is something you want to implement in your own practice, don't forget to book your free call. I'll get you the info you need to help you do it right. See you next Wednesday for our next live training. I hope you all have a great week. Thank you so much. Dang it. Zoom.